Welcome to Weaponized News with your hosts, Stuart Webb and Sam Cheney. Fighting the international bankers' one world government scientific dictatorship. Break the mind control. Be the change you want to see in the world. And now, it's time for Weaponized News.
Welcome to Weaponized News on 1680 AM here in Fresno, California. I'm your host, Stuart Webb, along with my co-host, Sam Cheney. Please visit our website, weaponizednews.com. We post articles daily. And please support alternative media because that is the real media. The mainstream doesn't report on anything or anything of value. They report on Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce Jenner. We don't even know what he is. But that's not important. So here at Weaponized News, we have on people that actually do deep research and actually cover things that need to be talked about. So our guest for the first hour of this broadcast, he's been on the show before. His name is Jan Irvin. Gnosticmedia.com is his website. Jan, how you doing today?
Good. How are you gentlemen tonight?
Well, we're putting up with the tyranny here in Fresno, California. They're spraying us every day. Our politicians lie to us constantly. We're dealing with it, but we're trying to wake people up as much as we can and have a discussion, a debate about what's going on because we have to. We have to. And so we appreciate the work you've done, the research you've done, and we just need to keep pushing forward. Now let's talk about the article you just put out, Spies in Academics' Clothing. We know the educational system. Well, last time you were on the show, we were talking about the CIA, and they're basically them influencing society to make drug culture, specifically like LSD, the hallucinogenics types drugs, even magic mushrooms, to push a certain type of degeneration of society. And this is not even talked about, but really, it wasn't some movement that, oh, free love. Yeah, we just want to smoke pot and do LSD. No, it was actually pushed by the CIA, which we discussed last time you were on. How far does it go? How deep does it go in the educational system?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big question. It goes well into the education system. We know women like Gloria Steinem worked for the CIA. There's an excellent quote on the CIA's FOIA website, and let me see if I can pull that up here real quick. And they can also find it linked in my brain database from the website. But regarding Steinem, DCI William Colby, the former head of the CIA, said, quote, "I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States." Quoting her again, "I never felt I was being dictated to at all." And so we can see that, speaking of academia and everything, feminism is heavily promoted in academia today. Rianne Eisler's work, this promotion of false ideas against men, they're basically they're promoting this idea of the dominator culture that was created by Rianne Eisler, who worked for the CIA and the Club of Rome. But the idea is to minimize men, to obfuscate the role that men have traditionally had, to make men sort of pointless, ineffectual fathers, no need for us in the family, etc. Karen Strouhan, she runs a YouTube channel called Girl Writes What, and she's made many dozens of videos exposing feminism, the history behind it. She's done a lot of research there, and I recommend that people check it out. But essentially what they're doing is they're attacking primarily the middle-class family and trying to destroy it. You see, if the family structure is destroyed, then people become essentially reliant on a socialist or communist type government. If the family is strong, if you have a family in a ranch with a cow and a few pigs and chickens, etc., if the government comes and goes, if things build and collapse, you don't care near as much because you and your family unit, you and your extended family, including grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., can just go right along through history and not care, self-sufficient. So that's what they really are trying to break with all of the promotion of feminism and the counterculture, the psychedelic revolution. Now, let me just read you a quote here by David McClelland, if I can find it here. Sorry.
That's no problem.
Well, a little bit more about the CIA. We see that from William Casey, the director, quoting him now in 1981 about the mainstream media. He says, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American people believe is false. So there's some more great love from our CIA.
Yeah.
Let me just read you regarding the psychedelic revolution. And this is from one of Timothy Leary's professors at Harvard, Professor David McClelland. And he says, it is probably no accident that the society which most consistently encouraged the use of these substances, India, produced one of the sickest social orders ever created by mankind, in which thinking men spent their time lost in the Buddha position under the influence of drugs, exploring consciousness, while poverty, disease, social discrimination, and superstition reached their highest and most organized form in all history.
Wow. Yeah, it seems that when I read just any of your articles, man, I mean, it drops bombs on each person you discuss. They're all connected, whether it be the Trilateral, Club of Rome, Skull and Bones, Council on Foreign Relations. It's just CIA. Everyone is somehow connected to all these groups or a part of these groups.
Well, the issue is, these groups aren't really that big. I mean, we're dealing with a pretty tight-knit group. What's interesting is when you start researching this stuff and getting into who they went to school with, who they worked with, where they worked, etc., you usually only have to go 1 or 2 degrees of separation. And, at most 3 before you get right back to the same core group of people. And we, on my website, I maintain a database, and it's got thousands of citations in there if people want to find out where the connections actually come from. Yeah. It's not just a guilt by association, and there's nothing there. You have to actually look in there, and all the citations are there. But you can go in there and just study the database for a while, and you'll see how these people loop right back to one another. You go a few steps up, and it's right back. You go a few steps up, and it's right back. And it's always right back to these same core groups. Now, one of them might be a Fabian and also belong to the Council on Foreign Relations and the CIA. Another one might be Club of Rome and CIA or something like that. Yeah. But in reality, in the forefront, when you look at these connections, their separation isn't really that obscure.
And you talk about in your article, Jan, and the full title of the article is Spies in Academic Clothing, The Untold History of MKUltra and the Counterculture, and How the Intelligence Community Misleads the 99%. So it's a mouthful, but I mean, you got 195 citations in this article, so it's very well documented.
Yeah, well, it was just a few pages short of a book, really, and it was quite a dilemma to publish it for free or to publish it in book form. So I really hope people donate and contribute to the show, etc., for all of the work that I had to, that I ended up putting out for free for that. And I figure, the hippie community, they're the community that needs it the most, and they're the least likely to pay for something to get it.
Yeah,
they're so
so you're giving them a head start a little bit, right?
Right. So they're so filled with communists and socialists, always looking for handouts. Yeah. That it really, I figured since that's really the group that needs it the most, it should be there for them. So
well, it's like this group, like you talked about, the hippie movement that never really left the 70s or 60s, 70s. I mean, they're not really contributing much. I mean, look, I'm not against doing drugs if you want to do that, but it's the counterculture that the establishment has pushed. So all those people basically aren't productive. They want handouts. They agree with the communist narrative. And we're trying to tell them, hey, this was all pushed by government, by the establishment.
Let me read you something that exemplifies your exact point right there. And this is from one of the CIA's researchers, Dr. Louis Jolyon West. And he's the infamous guy that murdered the world's largest elephant at the time, Tusco, with a massive dose of LSD. It's a very famous story. So this guy says the role of drugs and the exercise of political control is also coming under increasing discussion. Control can be through prohibition or supply. The total or even partial prohibition of drugs gives the government considerable leverage for other types of control. An example would be the selective application of drug laws permitting immediate search or no-knock entry against selected components of a population, such as members of certain minority groups or political organizations. But a government could also supply drugs to help control a population. This method, foreseen by Aldous Huxley in Brave New World, has the government element employing drugs selectively to manipulate the governed in various ways. To a large extent, the numerous rural and urban communes, going back to your statement on communism, communes, which provide great freedom for private drug use and where hallucinogens are widely used today, are actually subsidized by our society. Their perpetuation is aided by parental or other family remittances, welfare and unemployment payments, and benign neglect by the police. In fact, it may be more convenient and perhaps even more economical to keep the growing numbers of chronic drug users, especially of the hallucinogens, fairly isolated and out of the labor market with its millions of unemployed. To society, the communards with their hallucinogenic drugs are probably less bothersome and less expensive if they are living apart than if they are engaging in alternative modes of expressing their alienation, such as active, organized, vigorous political protest and dissent. And then he goes on, the hallucinogens comprise a moderate but significant portion of the total problem in Western society. The foregoing may provide a certain frame of reference against which not only the social but also clinical problems created by these drugs can be considered.
We're seeing the massive welfare state continue to grow, unemployment, and those people, what do you think they're going to be doing when they're sitting on their butts on the couch playing fantasy football because they don't have a job? They're going to probably be partaking in some experimental drugs. I mean, I would be if I was unemployed.
Speaking of, fantasy football or something, what about all of the people that go to Burning Man each year, right?
Yeah.
And they spend months building some fancy display or something for Burning Man that gets torched. So they're not they're not building anything long term for their lives. They're building something to go out and party and be naked in the desert and in the sand and dust, and then torch it after a week. It goes nothing towards the long term of their life. So they basically are just burning it out.
And they have they have some good things like the Burning Man. I've heard people talk about it, and usually it's people that are in their late 20s still trying to party when they really should be, I don't know, working, maybe having a family, starting a family. I just got married, I want to have kids. But they have some of it right. It's like, we're going to this Burning Man where all you can do is barter, but then we're going to do a bunch of drugs and burn stuff down. And then that's it. It's like they're not contributing, really. If they took that energy, used it, and got politically involved, they could actually change a whole community to work even better. But that's the problem. It's not about the community working better long term. It's about having fun and being, kind of free love, hippie, that whole hippie movement, which really is just what the establishment wants.
Right, that's exactly right. And essentially, the point is you're not building a family, you're not building a ranch with the cow and the pigs and the chickens so that you're able to self-sustain. They promote socialist communist ideals, Terence McKenna and all that. And I should mention up front for all of those who are in the listening audience screaming, well, he doesn't know, he's never tried these substances. I've actually done psychedelics many hundreds of times. I was an ethnobotanist for 20 years, and so I do have a lot of experiences with these substances. I have gone to these parties. I have done all of those things before. So I'm talking about this having come out of it. Now, from my own standpoint, where would I be today? Sure, I figured all of this out, and I've been able to expose it, and I have a media company, and I can do all of that.
Yeah.
But where would I have been in life if I
continued to just do that?
Started, being active in my life at 18 or 23 instead of in my early 30s, right?
Yes.
And so, where would I be today? And that's really the point. And while you're out there partying and having fun, sure, it's fun, but what are you doing with your life? What is happening long term? Are you building something that is sustainable and can sustain and is not extending your adolescence to be reliant upon a communist state government. The government is not your friend, ladies and gentlemen. The government is trying to force all of these socialist programs on us, and it does in fact get worse and worse and worse. And pretty soon, they're going to be dictating who can reproduce, who can't, what you can and can't eat. You see this vegetarian agenda going on. And then promoting veganism everywhere. Well, here's a tip-off. The brain is 77% cholesterol, hydroxycholesterol, and burns saturated fats. So why would they be telling everybody to get on a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet? And when people get off of the grain and wheat, their cholesterol problems clear up. And if they get on a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet, more times than not, their health problems immediately begin to reverse. What is the agenda behind selling something like that? And not to mention the reproductive system is entirely built on cholesterol. Testosterone is made from cholesterol. So why would they be handing out Lipitor like candy and promoting
Cheerios
is bad? Right, promoting Cheerios and eat your whole grain wheat. Wheat is one of the most dangerous things that you can put in your body. And it's when you look at from the time of the Dust Bowl forward, they created this, they wiped out the Midwest and the wildlife and everything. They created this huge Dust Bowl, but they created all of this wheat, and then they had to market it. And not only that, but before that, they wiped out all the bison, which was a free food supply for everyone across the nation. That didn't just target the Native Americans. That targeted everybody. And, so with the extermination of the bison, we have the beginnings of these factory farms and everything. So they've created this whole mess and this whole disaster, and then they pin us into it. But they want us reliant upon the state, on socialist welfare programs and, being children beyond when you should be. They want,
Arrested development.
13 or 18 or whatever age, they're trying to keep people adolescent into their 30s and 40s by the time people start to wake up.
The Affordable Care Act keeps kids on their parents' health insurance until age 26. But Jan, can you get in back to the whole the health thing, the diet? Can you get into, because I've heard in other talks that you've given about the two different metabolisms, that the difference between wheat and a meat diet?
Right. Well, essentially, there's glycolysis, which is basically like a fight or flight diet. It's if there's a famine, it's probably a good thing to have it, because your body can switch to burning grains and things like that. So historically, throughout time, your grain was pretty much stored there as an emergency food supply for times of drought, etc. And then you could go to that and you could live through the hard times. And then people realized that they could control the stores of wheat to control the society eventually. But
Egypt, right? I mean, even back to Egypt. Right?
But you see, with the other form is essentially ketosis, which is a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet. And once you've done it for a few weeks, when you eliminate the grains and the sugars out of your diet, your body switches over into a ketosis state, which is its actual natural long-term state. And this is, you sleep better, you're less agitated in your sleep. I mean, if there's a famine or something, you're probably going to be more agitated. You probably want to wake up more for marauders or something, But when there's plenty of fat in the diet, you sleep better. Heart conditions very often immediately start clearing up. Diabetes starts clearing up. Skin problems, eczema, psoriasis, acne, all of these types of things, IBS, bowel problems start to clear up. But when you go to the doctor, there's so many different symptoms that are caused by wheat that the doctor will just give you a pill, this pill, that pill. You need, you need.
Instead of changing your diet.
Instead of saying, well, hey, we know that all of these, obesity, IBS, acne, all of these things are probably related to wheat and sugar. They give you drugs and medication to try to, quote unquote, stabilize you. And it's not to knock the medical system for emergency care. They're the best. But for
long-term
daily
care.
maintenance, you know,
Yeah.
you should, you know, if you go to a doctor at all, it should be someone like an ND, a naturopath, and not an MD, because MDs have almost no nutritional knowledge. They're just there to push pills, and they can't. You know, they really can't provide valid nutritional advice.
It's not the healthcare system anymore. It's the disease care system anymore. It's just it's not a long-term solution. That's why people are going to other methods.
It's when you get it, it's really the glycolysis healthcare system.
Wow.
You know, as long as they keep everybody in a state of glycolysis on the wheat and on the soda pops and on the beer and etc.
Yeah.
Then they're keeping you in a state where you're far more likely to get cancer, to get diabetes, to have heart disease, to have, you know, numerous other problems. Whereas if you're in a state of ketosis, you know, even I had a guest on my show a couple of years ago who had MS and was able to turn it around in about 4 to 6 months on a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet and eliminating grain entirely from his diet. And he was walking around with a cane, and he had a son that was 3 years old. He couldn't run and play with his kid. After a few months, he was out running and playing with his kid. And this Sally Fallon at the Weston A. Price, she's exposed a lot of this. David Asprey, who does the Bulletproof Diet and Bulletproof Coffee, he's exposed a lot of it. You know, so the information is out there if people look for it. But probably the two worst things you can put in your body are soy, which has extreme amounts of estrogen and is extremely bad, especially for men, but for women as well, and wheat. And I'm not sure which one of those is worse. Maybe wheat might be worse, but they're both pretty bad. In fact, even the FDA lists soy as a poison a couple of hundred times.
Jeez. It's amazing, Jan. And we see, I mean, read the book, Brave New World. I mean, we're following that same game plan right out of Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. That big pharma's pushing this garbage down our throat, and I guess the doctors go along to get along. Maybe they're getting kickbacks. Who knows? You know what I mean?
Sure, they do get kickbacks.
I'm sure they do. But let's get back into your article now. You're mean.
Well, let me just read something that you just reminded me of when you just mentioned, Aldous Huxley there. So, but now psychoanalysis is being combined with hypnosis, and hypnosis has been made easy and indefinitely extensible through the use of barbiturates, which induce a hypnoid and suggestible state in even the most recalcitrant, subjects. Within the next generation, I believe that the world's rulers will discover that infant conditioning and narco-hypnosis are more efficient as instruments of government than clubs and prisons, and that the lust for power can just as completely satisfied by suggesting people into loving their servitude as by flogging and kicking them into obedience. So this is what we're talking about, and it's not just the one thing. If you approach these, this topic as, it's just one thing, or mind control,
it's multifaceted,
or feminism, or vegetarianism, you don't see it. But if you step back and you look at all of these things, then you begin to see the greater picture of the intentional degradation of society. In fact, people can read William Sargent's book, Battle for the Mind, and he was one of the MKUltra researchers in England.
Well, yeah, and we have the mass fluoridation of water now, which the government had to finally lower the appropriate levels. Finally, I guess, because their narrative is falling apart. But fluoride makes you less aggressive, right? I mean, it's
absolutely.
So that is mass medication to the population, and we're not even asked for it. I mean, it's not prescribed. We don't know the dosage. How can you control the dosage? But, a lot of things that you're talking about as far as health goes, now that we're on the Aldous Huxley, Ben Fuchs talks about the same exact things you're talking about, and it's very simple. It's like, you go to the doctor for, like, if you got hit by a car and you got a broken leg and you need immediate surgery.
Gunshot wound.
Yeah, gunshot wound. I mean, that is when you go. You don't go for long-term care. And now, when I go to Walmart, I see a line of people there to get prescriptions at a Walmart. And I'm like, man, these people look like they're not even alive.
Zombies.
Here's the real question, though. Here's the real question, though. What are you doing at Walmart?
That is a great question, and maybe I shouldn't answer that. No, I'm just kidding. Hey, sometimes you got to go to Walmart when you're in a time crunch or whatever. But that is a good question, and I should probably ask myself that same thing.
You know what? Every time I go to Walmart, I and I haven't been for a few years now, but
it's funny.
Every time I've been there, I'd see people hitting their children and stuff.
Oh, it's bad. Yeah, if you want to see what society really is becoming, go to a Walmart. It's kind of scary. I mean, anywhere you go, even if it's a good part of town, it's like you don't know what you're going to get there.
Or out in the food line in front of a Costco where they're loading all the people up on the boots before they go in.
That's true too. And I was just at Costco too the other day.
In that movie Idiocracy.
For work though.
Idiocracy, the only store was Costco.
Is Costco.
Yeah. And, and I watched Idiocracy. I love that film. I've seen it like 10 times. I watched it again about 5 weeks ago. So.
No, it basically shows us what we are becoming. I mean, maybe 15 years ago it didn't seem as realistic, but now it literally is. We've seen the people on the street. Sam and I have gone out to Fresno State and filmed kids and asked them, hey, do you know who the vice president is? They have no idea. I mean, it's just not even a question. They don't know.
Who did we fight in World War II?
They don't know. They don't know who we fought in World War II. I mean, just basic things. They couldn't even, most of them couldn't name the 7 continents. Yeah. Some did, which I was like, thank you. But it's just, the people that have kind of woken up to this have been like, I wonder how dumb the public is. Let me start asking people questions. Let me start, doing some investigations. And then you realize, oh my goodness, we are living in an idiocracy. But back to the drugs real quick. The reason, they want to keep drugs illegal, as you talked about with Jolly and West, they want it to be illegal so they can selectively use it for no-knock raids. Adam Kokesh, they didn't like what he was doing with the demonstration in D.C. with the shotgun or whatever, and then they raided his house, and they found mushroom. That was the charge. They found magic mushrooms, illegal drugs, which I don't know if we're there or not. But either way, it's an inanimate object. The drug war is such a fraud, they want to keep it illegal so they can use it against us. Asset forfeiture seizure, same thing. Just,
sure. Here's another thing, though, is, as I revealed in my last article last November, I put out an article in Theogen's What's in a Name, and if I can remember the full title here.
The set and setting?
And in that article I reveal, it's called, in Theogen's What's in a Name, The Untold History of Psychedelic Spirituality, Social Control in the CIA, and in that article, I reveal the origins of each of the names given to quote-unquote psychedelics. Originally, they were called schizophrenogens.
Yes.
And then they were called hallucinogens. And then they were called psychotomimetics. And then they were called psychedelics. And now they're marketing them as entheogens, a word created by Carl Ruck. But I exposed the origins of each of these words and who created each word. And actually, almost all of the words were created by 2 teams. So we had Humphrey Osmond and Aldous Huxley, and we know Humphrey Osmond was MKUltra. Aldous Huxley was one of the key architects. And then the other team was Professor Carl Ruck at Boston University with R. Gordon Wasson and Jonathan Ott, Jeremy Bigwood, etc. And they created the word entheogen. But Humphrey Osmond, Abram Hoffer worked with Osmond and Huxley. He created hallucinogen. Humphrey Osmond created psychotomimetic and psychedelic. And then over the decades, they flipped back and forth. And between each other, they call them psychotomimetics. But essentially, rebellious kids don't take legal substances, especially ones called psychosis mimicking or schizophrenogens. Right?
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun. It doesn't even
sexy.
Yeah, it's not trendy.
So this is why psychedelic is the only word in the English language to use psyche with with an E instead of PSYCHE instead of PSYCHO. It's the only word in the English language, and that's because they wanted to avoid a psycho experience with the drugs, so they called them psychedelic. And then later on, they were remarketed again as quote-unquote entheogens. So this is their latest tactic to promote these substances. But MKUltra is alive and well, and I've this newest article, and people can find it, by the way, on my website gnosticmedia.com, GNOSTIC media.com. And it's right there on the front page. You can just scroll down a little bit. You'll find it there. But if you read that article, and this is the 5th article in the series, you'll understand how they've done all of this stuff. And I've provided everyone the citations to check. Please don't just take my word for this stuff. Pull out the books, research the citations, and verify for yourself know if I'm telling the truth or not. Don't just...
You've done the groundwork.
Yeah. Make sure that you do the groundwork and check the research and make sure that it's valid, because this is how they perpetuate these lies on society, is by getting people to not check what they believe, to take people's word for whatever it says. So I insist, get out there, check my citations, please.
Yeah, that's a very bold challenge that you have there. So you're very confident in your work, and we appreciate that.
Research.
And we that's what we tell everybody on this show all the time. Yeah. Don't take our word for it. Go check the articles that we're talking about. Go check our work and figure this stuff out. Don't believe us. But Jan, your detractors are going to say, now you're being mean to the CIA, and they're here for national security, and they keep us safe.
Best thing to ever happen to the USA.
Yeah,
right?
they're the greatest thing ever
since sliced bread.
But then you go and look at your article, and I'm reading now a citation that you have out of the New York Times, and we see that the CIA is pushing over 1,000 books published by the CIA. I mean. And all secretive. It doesn't say CIA publisher. It's under all these front companies.
Right. And that was by 1977. They published over 1,000 books. So what about in the last?
What about now?
Near 38 years since then.
All the major politicians. Who knows how many the CIA actually just ghost wrote, right?
And that's what I show in this article, is how these academic cells work. And so what I want to do is I want to read a quote from President Bill Clinton's professor Carol Quigley at from Georgetown University, because this quote really makes it clear how these intelligence cells or academic cells operate and how they perpetuate these lies onto society. So this is, again, Carol Quigley, Bill Clinton's professor. He says, quote, "By the interaction of these various branches on one another, under the pretense that each branch was an autonomous power, the influence of each branch was increased through a process of mutual reinforcement. Unanimity among various branches was believed by the outside world to be the result of the influence of a single truth, while really it was the result of the existence of a single group. Thus, a statesman, a member of the group, announces a policy. About the same time, the Royal Institute of International Affairs publishes a study on the subject, and an Oxford Don, a fellow at All Souls, and a member of the group, also publishes a volume on the subject, probably through a publishing house like G. Bell and Sons or Faber and Faber, allied to the group. The statesman's policy is subjected to critical analysis and final approval in a leader, quote-unquote, in the Times, while the two books are reviewed in a single review in the Times Literary Supplement. Both the leader and the review are anonymous, but written by the members of the group. And finally, at about the same time, an anonymous article in the Roundtable strongly advocates the same policy. The cumulative effect of such tactics as this, even if each tactical move influences only a small number of important people, is bound to be great." So this is, how they perform these. And what I've done in my article, Spies in Academic Clothing, is I look at the 7 main books. 6 of them are written by American authors, and 1 of them is British. And I show how all of these 7 books are telling the official storyline that was created by the CIA. Now, where most of this official storyline originates is from a book called The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, written by John D. Marks in 1979. It's actually a hugely famous book. Most of your audience will have heard of it.
Yeah.
Or at least the movie The Manchurian Candidate.
I've seen that,
That's actually based on a novel from the late 50s. Yeah. But what they may not know about John D. Marks was he was the assistant to the director of the Bureau of Intelligence and Research. So literally, it's a book written by an intelligence agency. So it's like the fox guarding the hen house, right?
Yeah.
And then we see John Marks create, and I show all of the papers. I check the MKUltra documents that are available to the public today, and I show how John Marks created at least 7 or 8 of the official myths that have been, perpetuated throughout society since the late 1970s, and it all traces back to him. And then you see after that, after his book comes out, you see all of the other guys cite him as the official on the subject, and John D. Marks says, Mark says, but if you go to the beginning of the book, all the people who are citing him assisted him with writing the book.
Yeah. It's peer reviewed, but they're just citing each other's
they're
research,
citing each other. It's to use a colloquial slang term, it's like a circle jerk.
Yeah,
and then people are like,
of lies.
But people are saying, oh, there's no conspiracy out there against American society. When we see that they're all in these academic cells, they're all in these intelligence agencies, these secret societies, these think tanks, they all are linked together.
And absolutely they are. And especially those out in the audience who really doubt what we're talking about, and they want to say, this guy is crazy. You guys, you don't know what you're talking about. How could you have someone like this on? One of the biggest things they like to do is get people to think with fallacies and name calling, that sort of stuff. So, always, instead of just basing your opinion on this interview, and, even an interview should never be taken as representative of the body of work itself. So I do recommend that people go to the website and read the full article and take it in, study the citations, verify them, and know what the information says. If we think with fallacies and we want to dismiss it, well, how could these people do this? What is their agenda? I could never do something like that, so how could other people?
Of course.
There are people in our society that are psychopaths.
Yes.
And psychopaths are not like us, and they don't think like us.
They don't feel like us.
They don't feel like us. They don't have emotions. So they commit these acts, and they do, basically what they do is they know how they're supposed to act or how to pretend to act, and that's what they do. But it's important for people to understand the mind of a psychopath is not like yours. Just because you can't do those things doesn't mean that there aren't others out there who would and actually do them on a daily basis. And they're usually found in places like, like police,
government positions, high government positions.
Especially in intelligence or high government positions. Senators, things like that. But intelligence, police, often these are places where where these psychology is another big one, where these type of people are found. So
Hillary Clinton is a great example. Saul Alinsky, lover, and she just lies constantly. I mean, she's a psychopath, and she may be our next president.
Sure. Well, and they're all psychopaths too.
Yeah.
I put out a video several years ago that people can find on my website and also on popupfallacies.com. But it's President Obama giving a speech after the supposed 11th death of Osama bin Laden, and in a 9-minute speech, Obama lies like 81 times.
No, he's a professional. He's a paid actor. No, I mean, honestly, he is a manufactured agent, I believe. Just kind of what really no one knows where he came from.
Sure.
And now,
but he just sits there and bull-faced lies. I mean,
and even when we have videos, of him 6 years ago saying the complete opposite thing, I mean, it doesn't matter because he's a black president, and he's friendly. He goes on the nightly, the late night talk shows, and he's like a celebrity. He goes watch Bulls. He watches the Bulls play when he's in Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. He's a paid manufactured actor, and he is a sociopath. I mean, he is a psycho because he lies constantly. Anyone who could actually see, normal people don't act like that because they want goodwill towards people, the golden rule, they have morals. These people that run our society don't have morals. Now,
what you're talking about, right, is that goodwill, that, your typical Christian, Protestant Christian ethic, that is exactly what the psychopath plays on.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Well, Obama in 2008, man, everything he was saying was almost like Ron Paul-esque. With the stuff he wanted to do, and I could see why. They know what the people want to hear and how they want to hear it. That's why they love to manipulate us, because they study how to manipulate us. They study it.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. Do it. It's like, I'm going to reform Wall Street after
I'm going to get rid of Guantanamo. I'm going to end all the wars. And then he does the complete opposite. And so, to be that kind of a scumbag, I mean, you have to be a psycho, or else you would feel bad. You would feel the guilt, but they have no guilt.
No conscience.
Yeah, now, while we're on this subject, we have Bilderberg going on tomorrow, starting tomorrow. Actually, I think it's already started because we're a day ahead. First, before we get into Bilderberg, real quick, since we got about 20 minutes left, Now, this 2016 election, I mean, what is the solution for us to get back? I mean, obviously it's self-sufficient, being self-sufficient, getting back to the family, being independent. But what is the solution? I mean, do we need people to get back in their local governments, start calling? I call my congressman as much as I can, my local representatives. What is the solution for us to kind of get back towards that?
That's a really good question, and I think the person with the most knowledge in that area is probably Clint Richardson, and I would suggest people check out his work on that stuff because he understands the way the government works and all of this better than anyone. And of course,
jurisdiction and
the
stuff.
Anarchists will say not to participate at all, but he's showing that the entire corporate structure and everything that's rising up around us today is in fact anarchy.
Yeah.
And so,
because they're not even doing what we're saying. It's almost like they're. Even if we have a government that we pay, but they don't even do what they're supposed to do.
They don't represent us.
So it really is anarchy. It's everyone for himself, right? Through the government.
And they're doing all this stuff through corporations and through private groups. Just like the Republican and Democrat parties. Those are private parties. Those are not anything a part of the government. So and then these two parties have total control over the electoral process of the country. So. And, so this is private organizations. They're not acting under the law, they're acting, outside the law. So, under Clint Richardson's view, they're actually acting from anarchy. So even the idea of how anarchy has been sold to us has been flipped upside down. So,
well, we had
that's something that actually I just recorded a long discussion. Hopefully I'll get it out on my show tonight. For people to check out on Gnostic Media. But, I recorded a whole debate between Clint Richardson and Mark Stevens yesterday on this very topic.
Yeah, well, we actually had Jeff Berwick on a few weeks back, and he's actually he's an anarchist, but he's actually running for office in Canada because he's like, well, I have to do something, and the best way to get rid of government is probably to go through the government, as ironically as that is. But really, that's the only way. You have to get involved in some way. So if people say, and they've skewed the definition, the system has skewed the definition of what anarchy really is. I mean, shoot, a lot of my views, I would consider I'm kind of an anarchist, but I'm a peaceful anarchist, and it's they make it in such a negative term that it's just chaos.
The black bloc anarchists go around and do a bunch of violence, destroy people's property. Yeah. And they were all provocateurs. Yes. And then that turns everybody off to the idea
of having minimal government or no government where we can all function together. But yeah, I mean, we need to start. We have to get involved. That's it. I mean, people got to get up off their ass and start doing their research. I mean, I would recommend them to go to your site, gnosticmedia.com, and just read some of your articles, because just reading a page, you break down how all these people, and you said they're kind of a tight-knit group. I mean, they come up in a lot of different areas. You find them when you do your research. Oh, that person, I read this, and he's involved in that, and he's connected to the Trilateral or whatever. He was involved, or he was the chairman. I mean, all these people, it's a wealth of knowledge that we need to go and start identifying these people. Now, let's get to Bilderberg real quick, because I want to know your thoughts on the Bilderberg group itself.
Well, and I'm not even. I'll warn you, I'm not much of an expert on the Bilderbergs. I could probably help you with others better, but I'll give it a shot.
Well, let's just talk about it for a little bit since it's going on. It's happening. What do you think? How much power do you think they wield? They have members of the big media. They have The Economist editors there, Bloomberg's editors there, but it's not being covered by the mainstream. It's not being covered by that media. And you're seeing this police state. You're seeing these meetings are so secretive, even though they're now publicly releasing press releases and participant lists on their website. But what do you think? Do you think that's where it's really all going down the agenda? I mean, the most powerful people in the world.
We have to be careful to not overly focus on a single group as well. I mean, sure, this one is being vetted, but we also have to, as I reveal in the Spies in Academic Clothing article, intelligence communities love to throw one aspect of an operation or one agent under the bus to cover a larger operation. So we need to make sure that this isn't a scapegoat or
not the end all be all.
A look over here while stuff is going on over there and over there. So I would be careful of that. But the CFR is I think they're all influential. The Fabians have definitely been influential. The Club of Rome, the Bilderberg Group. There are many that do this stuff, and then they all act as cells within themselves, and they go home and they spread this agenda, and essentially what the agenda is neo-feudalism. They want to bring us back to a state
a Hunger Games,
pre-Renaissance, I would say,
like Hunger Games style. You think
like Hunger Games, but they really want everybody back to the state of peasants in a feudal caste system, and probably much worse than what India is under now. And India, you have cows everywhere with people starving. By the hundreds of millions in the streets, and they're told that they're not supposed to rise up because they were born into this karmic position. Now, the Brahma caste, of course, created that religion and told all of those people that was where they were born and that's where they need to stay. And you don't rise up because your next life you'll be a Brahmin. The next life, maybe the life after that one, right? In another lifetime, you'll be okay. So this is the agenda behind that, and they want to, the Hindu caste system, and as a system of social control, has been probably the most successful ever in the world, and they want to replicate that everywhere. And Huxley's Brave New World is essentially a westernization of the Hindu caste system. So, and going back to them selling, the drugs and promoting the LSD and everything, and that quote I read earlier from David McClelland, it goes to show what their ultimate agenda would be. And, in Huxley's Brave New World, don't ever feel emotions. Nothing is bad. Nothing is good. Here, have some soma. And, of course, they marketed soma as the Amanita muscaria mushroom, and it can't be coincidence, even though there's two different soma, like the Greek somatic and then the Siberian soma. But Aldous Huxley and Gordon Wasson worked together. I don't think it's coincidence that they both use different forms of that word, soma, and wrote books on it at similar times, while both of them are hanging out with Dwight Eisenhower at the Century Club.
Wow, and you talk a lot about in your article the serendipity of it all, the coincidentalness, and how it's just.
Well, I'm glad you got the joke of that, because somebody actually wrote me and said, "Well, you use serendipity about 20 or 30 times too much." And I'm like, "Well, that's the joke."
Yeah.
Because whenever you read like the official versions of these stories, whether it's the music and entertainment industry or MKUltra and the psychedelic revolution, you're reading a book about the history of the Grateful Dead or the Beatles, it's like, and serendipitously, this person just happened to show up, and serendipitously, they were driving past each other on the freeway in opposite directions during rush hour traffic, and they just happened to pull over at the same spot on the center divider right there, and they just happened to meet and then drove off together and formed the new band.
It's a bit far-fetched.
It's just the dumbest slapstick that possible. I mean, it's like I like to call the CIA the Central Entertainment Agency, because they're so involved in.
They have an entertainment liaison, right?
Well, and not only that, but if you look at most of what's coming out of Hollywood, a lot of that's by the Central Entertainment Agency.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, like actors, what are actors? They're professional liars, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They're putting on an act, so they're going to be key people that the CIA would recruit from. Musicians,
Absolutely.
It's a given also. Musicians carry a lot of equipment. They have, roadies and stuff. They're traveling all over the world on these tours. Piggyback some agents, or the band members are the agents.
There's a lot of crossover too,
and so there's a lot of crossover in that stuff, and so this way they can control the music, they can control the entertainment, industry. We see from my new article how they control books and research through academic cells, etc.
It's like when Leo DiCaprio gets up in front of the UN and talks about climate change. I mean, and he acts like it's this serious big deal, for 3 minutes. But he is one of the best actors of all time. Like in my generation, it's like he was probably just paid and said, "This is the script. Go and act. Go do your job. I mean,
sell it. Sell
yeah,
it.
sell it.
Sell
And
this.
meanwhile, they want people to believe that CO2 is bad, and as you know, and you guys are in Fresno, and right there is the beginning of the whole huge food valley of California.
And they're droughting us out.
Well, you know, and here's the thing: is every farmer and every pot grower knows that when you spray CO2 in there, the plants grow faster. When plants grow faster, what do? They make
Food
oxygen.
and oxygen, yeah, they produce.
It's amazing the lies that they tell us and the ignorance of the public. But Jan, for our last 6 minutes here, can we get into John G. Fuller in your article? You talk about how the CIA is pushing this UFO phenomenon on the American public.
Yeah. Well, one of the interesting things when I was investigating the MKUltra, you know, they're in 1951, the CIA and military intelligence, it looks like, including French intelligence, dosed or used some form of lysergamide or some derivative of ergot to dose an entire village in France. 7 people died. The entire village, almost everybody, went crazy for days, weeks, months. A few of them never recovered. And so I began investigating that, and I began seeing that Fuller was pulling all of these media stunts and admitting that he was lying to gain attention. And he goes into France. He creates this huge lie about being there to research UFOs. And apparently nobody knew that he had written 2 prior books on UFOs. But as it turns out, John G. Fuller is the same guy who popularized the alien abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. And it appears that Betty and Barney Hill, who were psychiatric patients, were hypnotized and drugged. And, you know, so let me read you this quote here, if I can find it real quick, from Aldous Huxley. He says, meanwhile, having been looking into Dianetics, basically it seems to be a procedure by where one obtains age regression without putting the patient into deep hypnosis. The aim is to get at the words and phrases heard by the patient at moments of lowered consciousness and accepted by him as obsessive commands like post-hypnotic suggestions. The subconscious seems to take these verbal commands literally and unreasoningly without regard to their context. The result can be disastrous both mentally and physically. If this is the case, we may have here the rationale of magic spells, curses, anathemas, and the like. And the reason why I bring this up is Aldous Huxley worked with Andrea Puharich, who was one of the MKUltra's researchers. He was also Army investigating these things as well. And Andrea Puharich worked directly with John G. Fuller. And so we have a direct connection here with MKUltra and Fuller, and I think he was doing a 15-year follow-up study. But in his 2 books on the UFO scenario, we see him using the exact same media stunts that he does in France and that he also does in Brazil. And so we see him doing it in Exeter with the Incident at Exeter book and in his other book with Betty and Barney Hill. But later on in his book, he discloses a few little interesting factoids about why they were doing these things. And he says, the Orson Welles invasion of the late 30s, a single dramatized radio program resulted in mass hysteria. Would the same thing or worse happen if official government sources announced blandly, he says, that we definitely had visitors from another planet? And so he even admits in the book that the threat of the UFO was still psychological. And he goes on a couple pages later, this is page 33, 34, he explains that anthropological files contain many examples of societies, it said, quote, sure of their place in the universe, which have disintegrated when they came to associate with previously unfamiliar societies, espousing different ideas and different ways of life. And so, and then on the next page, he says, the fear of alien visitors would obviously cause a disruption in the pattern of normal life. So this is, you know, again, the goal of what they're trying to do. And he also cites the RAND Corporation and all of this stuff in this book. You know, so again, we see this same thing. It's about the disruption or the degeneration of society, interrupting the normal pattern of life, causing chaos. So this is basically what the CIA does. The CIA constantly wreaks havoc on society.
And Paul Krugman, the best economist in the world, apparently to some, the Keynesian, he thinks that an alien invasion, he actually promotes the idea that it would actually stimulate the economy because people would have to build things to battle the aliens or whatnot. So it's like this whole idea that they want to push because they want chaos to ensue so that they can just control, because people can't handle. A lot of people can't handle even when I just tell them, hey, there's world leaders meeting in secret and the media won't cover it. They just, they don't even know what to say to it, and they really don't care because they just don't know. They probably think I'm weird. For me to talk about it,
they can't understand how it affects them directly. When in fact all of these things do,
yes.
And that's getting people to be disinterested in politics is key.
Yes. There's no hope. Don't get involved.
And it's like Clint Richardson exposed. You get him to follow a red herring like Ron Paul.
Yeah.
And, Ron Paul is talking about audit the Fed, audit the Fed, audit the Fed. And when you go and you look into the CAFR report on the Fed's own website, the Fed is audited every single year, and you can download the audit right off of their website.
Yeah. Wow. Maybe... Maybe it's you're right. It could be a red herring to lead people away and just think that, that's not the key issue and we shouldn't focus on that. Well, we got about a minute left. Jan Irvin, a wealth of knowledge, always a great time, a great interview. People need to go to your website, gnosticmedia.com. That's Gnostic with a G at the beginning of it. So please check out Jan's work. Any last words, Jan?
No, thanks for having me. Please check, verify the citations, read things before you come to conclusions, always, no matter what it is. You can spend a lifetime believing in lies or a few minutes or a few hours researching and reading things before you come to conclusions. So the choice is yours. You want to follow lies your whole life, or you want to discover the truth does exist.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And we'll talk to you again soon, and we'll keep you updated on what we're doing, and we'll have you on again in the show.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
All right. See you, Jan.
Thank you,
take
Jan.
care.
Bye-bye. to who they went to school with, who they worked with, where they worked, etc., you usually only have to go 1 or 2 degrees of separation. And, at most 3 before you get right back to the same core group of people. And on my website, I maintain a database, and it's got thousands of citations in there if people want to find out where the connections actually come from.
Yeah.
It's not just a guilt by association, and there's nothing there. You have to actually look in there, and all the citations are there. But you can go in there and just study the database for a while, and you'll see how these people loop right back to one another. You go a few steps up, and it's right back. You go a few steps up, and it's right back. And it's always right back to these same core groups. Now, one of them might be a Fabian and also belong to the Council on Foreign Relations and the CIA. Another one might be Club of Rome and CIA or something like that.
Yeah.
But in reality, in the forefront, when you look at these connections, their separation isn't really that obscure.
And you talk about in your article, Jan, and the full title of the article is Spies in Academic Clothing, the Untold History of MKUltra and the Counterculture, and How the Intelligence Community Misleads the 99%. So it's a mouthful, but you got 195 citations in this article, so it's very well documented.
Yeah, well, it was just a few pages short of a book, really, and it was quite a dilemma to publish it for free or to publish it in book form. So I really hope people donate and contribute to the show, etc., for all of the work that I had to, that I ended up putting out for free for that. And I figure,
you've done, and we just need to keep pushing forward. Now let's talk about the article you just put out, Spies in Academics Clothing. We know the educational system. Well, last time you were on the show, we were talking about the CIA, and they're basically them influencing society to make drug culture, specifically like LSD, the hallucinogenics types of drugs, even magic mushrooms, to push a certain type of degeneration of society. And this is not even talked about, but really, it wasn't some movement that, free love, yeah, we just want to smoke pot and do LSD. No, it was actually pushed by the CIA, which we discussed last time you were on. How far does it go? How deep does it go in the educational system?
Oh, wow. Well, that's a big question. It goes well into the education system. We know women like Gloria Steinem worked for the CIA. There's an excellent quote on the CIA's FOIA website, and let me see if I can pull that up here real quick. And they can also find it linked in my brain database from the website. But regarding Steinem, DCI William Colby, the former head of the CIA, said, quote, "I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted, who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States." Quoting her again, "I never felt I was being dictated to at all." And so we can see that, speaking of academia and everything, feminism is heavily promoted in academia today.
Welcome to Weaponized News with your hosts, Stuart Webb and Sam Cheney. Fighting the international bankers' one world government scientific dictatorship. Break the mind control. Be the change you want to see in the world. And now, it's time for Weaponized News.
Welcome to Weaponized News on 1680 AM here in Fresno, California. I'm your host, Stuart Webb, along with my co-host, Sam Cheney. Please visit our website, weaponizednews.com. We post articles daily. And please support alternative media, because that is the real media. The mainstream doesn't report on anything or anything of value. They report on Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce Jenner. We don't even know what he is. But that's not important. So here at Weaponized News, we have on people that actually do deep research and actually cover things that need to be talked about. So our guest for the first hour of this broadcast, he's been on the show before. His name is Jan Irvin. Gnosticmedia.com is his website. Jan, how you doing today?
Good. How are you gentlemen tonight?
Well, we're putting up with the tyranny here in Fresno, California. They're spraying us every day. Our politicians lie to us constantly. We're dealing with it, but we're trying to wake people up as much as we can and have a discussion, a debate about what's going on because we have to. We have to. And so we appreciate the work you've done, the research.
Rianne Eisler's work, this promotion of false ideas against men. They're basically they're promoting this idea of the dominator culture that was created by Rianne Eisler, who worked for the CIA and the Club of Rome. But the idea is to minimize men, to obfuscate the role that men have traditionally had, to make men sort of pointless, ineffectual fathers, no need for us in the family, etc. Karen Strouhan, she runs a YouTube channel called Girl Writes What, and she's made many dozens of videos exposing feminism, the history behind it. She's done a lot of research there, and I recommend that people check it out. But essentially what they're doing is they're attacking primarily the middle-class family and trying to destroy it. You see, if the family structure is destroyed, then people become essentially reliant on a socialist or communist type government. If the family is strong, if you have a family in a ranch with a cow and a few pigs and chickens, etc., you know, if the government comes and goes, if things build and collapse, you don't care near as much because you and your family unit, you and your extended family, including grandparents, aunts, uncles, etc., can just go right along through history and not care, self-sufficient.
Yep.
So that's what they really are trying to break with all of the promotion of feminism and the counterculture, the psychedelic revolution. Now, let me just read you a quote here by David McClelland, if I can find it here. Sorry.
That's no problem.
Well, a little bit more about the CIA. We see that from William Casey, the director, quoting him now in 1981 about the mainstream media. He says, we'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American people believe is false. So there's some more great love from our CIA.
Yeah.
Let me just read you regarding the psychedelic revolution. And this is from one of Timothy Leary's professors at Harvard, Professor David McClelland. And he says, it is probably no accident that the society which most consistently encouraged the use of these substances, India, produced one of the sickest social orders ever created by mankind, in which thinking men spent their time lost in the Buddha position under the influence of drugs, exploring consciousness, while poverty, disease, social discrimination, and superstition reached their highest and most organized form in all history.
Wow. Yeah, it seems that when I read just any of your articles, man, I mean, it drops bombs on each person you discuss. They're all connected, whether it be the Trilateral, Club of Rome, Skull and Bones, Council on Foreign Relations. It's just CIA. Everyone is somehow connected to all these groups or a part of these groups.
Well, the issue is, these groups aren't really that big. I mean, we're dealing with a pretty tight-knit group. What's interesting is when you start researching this stuff and getting in